Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for a castover. Not only a castover, but the 60th castover video that has been uploaded to this channel. Obviously, not all of them have been me. I just went and sent a Mesk one live, so I'm sure you guys are enjoying checking those out. And actually, Mesk is in this exact game. He's playing right now, right here. And of course, he's up against Keyan, round table 3 top. This was right after the episode of Roundtable Top Talk, R3T as I'm calling it, and before Fraudarchy actually began in earnest. So that should help narrow down exactly what's going on in this particular video. This map is a relatively new 1v1 map called Infinite Velocity by the Beaver. You can tell that the tiles are still a work in progress. But there's some interesting ideas, and most notably, there's this. Now, this is basically the freest early scout of all time, and I don't think Keyan knows about it yet. So, obviously, like, the map is revealed in terms of terrain, the same way that you can see here. Neither player really checking that one out. One of the things that I was thinking about for this map is that I honestly am not... I don't know exactly how this would work. It definitely would screw with AI. But because this Nydus Cesiant is right here, and they are linked, like these two are linked right to the base, you can destroy it, or you can leave it there. One of the things I was actually thinking about is maybe you could pre-place or I guess you can't pre-place hallucinations anymore, but something that you could, something you could do in theory is you could have the, maybe we can have a create hallucination, action or something, and it would do so over here to block this off, but obviously hallucinations expire after a certain amount of time, right? They have timed life. I was thinking something like that could be used, and I know that's used in some Brood War maps as well, to make them, do some interesting things where you have a short amount of time to do some action or something, right? So, or to be blocked, as it were. Now, Mesk will be putting a fulcrum back here. He's actually, his first structure was a treasury, and neither of that has been scouted. So Keyan is definitely a bit confused. He will find the treasury, but that shouldn't really make him feel like there's anything going on other than shenanigans. The fact that the fulcrum is all the way in the back is definitely just confusing to him, I think. The double pylon is interesting because he's splitting like where his production is. Obviously, there's not really an explicit reason to do that, but maybe he just wanted more build space and all of his stuff wasn't clumped up. You do have to plan your base layout somewhat in advance for Protoss, so that is definitely a bit silly, a bit confusing. And we have, oh, by the way, we do have a series of games here today, so this will not be the only one played on this map. There's a whole set of them, so stay tuned. I'm sure some of them are very silly. They were not evaluated for quality. It's just a new map with an interesting idea. And neither player has exactly figured it out yet. Okay, the fulcrum will be scouted, so that is good. Unfortunately, we still have that bug where the first player is not actually shown in here, so I only see Keyan's screen position in the replay. I definitely need to fix that bug, and we'll get there over time. Somehow this scribe was not killed. So laying the mines, or laying a mine. Okay, laying 2 mines there. I'm actually really surprised that neither player has used the Nydus. I guess maybe they don't know about it. I wonder if it takes them time until the next game or something for them to actually figure out what's going on. But so far we have 3 pylons and 3 structures powered by one each. So distributing his power as if it were a different thing. This vulture is in here, but not at all aware. And a quarry being made over here. I think Mesk was probably looking for a cheeky base he could take that was an island or something, but I think he took like one of the more open bases. It's just unlikely that you would maybe spot that. So a fairly low action game for now. There are idols joining the Drakidans, and finally the scribe will indeed go down. So that will be the second casualty of the whole game. And a second fulcrum also being built right next to the first, with a bunker with a vulture in it. So actually one of the changes that we ended up making somewhat recently. Oh, yeah, that's not a desync or anything. That's just Mesk finding out that he can cancel the first phase, but not the second, and he hit the wrong grid hotkey. Probably that's my suspicion. So that's hilarious. So, meanwhile, Keyan going to go ahead and expand more conventionally. Now, expanding forward does kind of signal that he doesn't want to play it safe. He wants to stretch his legs out and maybe see if he can affect some kind of change on the map. Interesting mind play. Again, I think maybe he's like worried about drops or something, right? That could be the case because obviously Keyan, when he plays Terran, is often using Trojans to drop like his entire army, realistically speaking. But the contain is going to be discovered. And I think that Vulture should be able to get out. So that's all well and good. Okay, finally, we've got workers being tasked onto the minerals down here, so it's not all total doom and gloom. And indeed, there's a single bunker, so Keyan's bane of existence. But yeah, one of the changes I ended up making after Fraudarchy. Oh, here we go. The mine drag. I think the mine actually didn't go off there because it was like tasked onto this first Drakodin, and the second Drakodin was able to kill it. So now there is a Drakodin loose in the base. I think... You know, with the Vulture and the Cyclops in the bunker, this could be a pretty easy fight, but unfortunately there will be a couple of worker kills here, at least. There should be, if he's not on, yeah, he's on manual target, so he should be able to kill that. If he had just let him follow through, then he would have been able to kill it for sure. But it looks like instead it'll be a little bit confused. He should actually be able to get this Vulture in the next hit, so that's good for him. Again, Mesk not really evacuating this, maybe worried about a follow-up, but there is no follow-up to be found. So this is mostly just causing issues. That last worker kill, that's pretty good. You know, it's just putting his opponent a little bit back, but we can see here that there's plenty of workers, and even if two of them are idle, not really a huge issue. So honestly, I think Keyan's still in a commanding position in terms of the state of play. He has the more conventional base. He can like saturate and pull workers around and stuff. But obviously Mesk does have double Fulcrum production. He is going to go ahead and take a third base, and you know he stayed alive. But neither player using the Nydus yet. They just don't know about it. Okay. Of course, the other thing you could do if you didn't want to do the hallucination trick, since I'm sure the Beaver will be interested in watching this one, is you could obviously put down like some actual neutral structure that must be, you know, cleared later or whatever. So, unfortunately, no mine clearing happening over here. Vultures will go ahead and bandy about, see what they can do, lay mines to grab scribes on their way to building new bases and stuff. Just good map vision as well. I mean, if you lay like a mini minefield along this ridge or ledge, you can kind of assume that there's no drops coming from that angle or something, or you know, you might happen to see them as they pass through. So, just sort of pathing around somewhat confusedly. I don't know if I ever finished my thought about the bunkers. I don't think so. So yeah, one of the bunker changes was to make it so that Cyprians require 2 transport space, and I think that will just solve a lot of the problems that people have had with bunkers. Because now you'll have to actually think a little bit more deeply about, you know, do you want single target firepower? Okay, then you need, you know, Mavericks because you can fit more of them. Whereas the Cyprians obviously are a little bit different in that respect. So if you want the crowd control, then you need more bunkers, probably. So it should at least, you know, increase the likelihood of, you know, some good value happening. And decrease the likelihood of one bunker killing everything. Although I still feel like there's definitely ways to just position yourself better, but actually Keyan does have access to one of those tools, right? He's getting the embassy for more worker production, maybe also a transport, but he's also grabbing the LAN effect so that he can disable bunkers, and that is obviously going to be a good move. I guess you know what? The other reason why he'll have the embassy out is for the witness. He doesn't have the gas for it yet, but being able to spot where these mines actually are so he can clear them. And yeah, Mesk just having plenty of time, plenty of room to sort of stretch his legs and move out. This is kind of the inverse of what we normally see in Protoss versus Terran. So I'm a bit surprised to see that this is the angle that the game has taken. There will indeed be a third base here. And at this point, like this very exposed, separate base has been allowed to... No, Mesk, don't do it! What are you doing? Oh, no, it's going to blow up again. Well, as that begins blowing up, there is indeed a fight happening. The mines coming up here actually blow up the golem, but that was kind of sacrificial anyway. I don't think he needs to chase it with the land effect because they're not really interested in fighting. Oh, okay, it's not actually going to blow up. This is something that he told me is that the overlay like got bugged out and stuck there. Okay. All right, well, that's a bit different. I thought for sure he was owning himself. So revealing the LAN effect does mean that, you know, there's going to be some Goliaths out in response, presumably. He could just go for Cyclops, but as you can see right here, yeah, queuing the Goliaths. He needs some way to deal with the LAN effects. And yes, okay, there has been discovery of a Nydus, ladies and gentlemen. When you click on this as a player, it should also tell you where it connects to. So that's another thing to note. And I'll pause for a moment so that I can sip my coffee for no reason. It's not like, you know, there's a link that's coffee themed somewhere on the screen. All right. It's not just any coffee. It's extreme coffee. If they want me to say their actual brand name, they can sponsor me. So, the Witness will be moving around on an intercept course for some of these vultures. This move out is not super scary because there's just not that many units. Obviously, the vultures will get cleaned up in short order. Looks like one of them... Oh, disabling his own units by accident. Okay. So 2 of them will evacuate. They still have 1 mine each. Obviously, that's just going to slow Keyan down. But if he's not super judicious about his movement, like if he moves up this ramp without actually coming up with the Witness first, that could... Oh, if he moved commands... Okay, he catches himself there. That was a little bit close. Definitely could have lasted Dracodon. And he doesn't have a crazy unit count either, right? He's got lots of money in the bank, which is kind of par for the course for Keyan, despite having nobody on this 3rd base. And he really wants to use Disruption Field on the Vultures. Okay, well... of course, if he happened to scout down... Oh my goodness, what are you doing? What's going on here? Silly. I wonder why he's just got it toggled on. That almost feels like maybe the replay isn't working correctly, but I don't know about that one. Seems to be fine. Now, Sentinel is out. Of course, it's the only thing that's actually doing damage here. And here we go. The land effect will indeed protect the air units. I think an Aurora fell, and some damage was dealt to everything else. You could still repair under D-Web. D-Field, as it is now. Cannot attack. But yeah, that Watchdog's going down. And there you go. So, initial tickling happening. And again, now, Keyan will also realize that there's a Nydus. I wonder if they'll ever use it. So, the land effect coming in, sort of blocking some shots here, but I think there's way too much here for only 1 land effect. The bunker is definitely going to go down, but it was definitely not worth it. It wasn't the prime target anyway. You almost wanted to disable the bunker and maybe also the Sentinel with the 1 land effect positioning, just put on hold pause, and then try to focus down the Madrigals. That's the very expensive unit, but in the background, obviously, there has been a tech up. There is a star pad, and the phalanxes obviously coming out are a pretty big deal. The fact that Keyan still thinks that that was like a reasonable... He didn't really have that much, so losing everything there. I mean, you got 2k minerals in the bank, buddy. You could definitely throw down like 4 extra gateways and start pumping Drax. Or anything. I mean, even more automaton registers would be nice, so he has a bit of a meat shield. He is going to go ahead and get some Panoptises out, so they should be more formidable in battle. But at this point, I also feel like the writing might indeed be on the wall. I mean, this base has gone unpunished for so long. Nobody's going for any capped geysers. I say that now. Mesk is actually capping his 3rd base. This is his natural expansion, or back expansion. And going for a triple starport. With the star pad, of course, for detection. Deal with the Witness, which actually was not left behind. So... or maybe it died. I'm actually not sure what happened with the Witness. I lost track, but could have just been like blindly pathed in and killed by splash damage or revealed by the Atlas. I think that's unlikely because it would be a little bit deeper. But in this situation, Keyan's not out of the game. Like, this is still an actionable position. You can still, build a lot more units. He is getting a single extra gateway. And nobody, again, using the Nydus. This must be one of the most confusing games for the Beaver to watch, because he's like... They must just not know about it, right? So there are some wyverns. Yes, I know that it's now pronounced wyvern. Although I'm still kind of thinking that wyvern is just another dialect or something. And dialect basically starts when people say something wrong and enough people think, oh, that must be the right way to say it. So whatever, right? But as we get some more production up, it's still very late. I don't know what's up with Keyan's money spending. Like, he definitely still has plenty of it. So I wonder if he's just like... He's not even really limited by gas at this point, right? So I am a little bit perplexed by that. There is no Crucible out here to enchant the defenses. There's no real extra defenses in general. Now, he might still be able to spot some of this, but it looks like they will pass like ships in the night, threading the needle between this vulture and its mine and the rest of this crew over here. So that could cause some mishappiness. With the Gorgons and the Wyverns, also some Madrigals and tanks and stuff out here in a bit of a hodgepodge formation, right? Being sort of left by the wayside. There's another macro cycle trying to spend the money of Mesk. Still got plenty of resources with which to buy some units. There's also a lot of stuff over here, right? We can see the tempo down is in effect, so they will have the single target damage. That is obviously pretty big. And now we do indeed have some harassment happening. So That will cancel a Warden. We do have the Phalanxes going ahead and firing the new projectile, the parabolic trajectory projectile, and the air units are indeed recalled such that they can assist. Now, the golems are running in. Not a bad first volley to get rid of one of those sieged phalanxes. Those are obviously a pretty big part of the eco. And he can drop the Dracodins right here, but it looks like maybe he had second thoughts. And if he drops them too close there, they are just going to get picked apart by none other than the spider mine. It's a real rough situation because he was sort of like a little bit, maybe he expected his air units to take a little bit longer to get there, but that definitely did not work out super well. Now he does have this envoy still, and he does have some air units, and he has some more Dracodins, so this is certainly not over, but it's definitely feeling like maybe he's a bit overwhelmed, shall we say. 2 more Panoptises still retreating, trying to take the scenic route. They were the ones who were just picking off a Madrigal earlier. And yeah, there's still some damage happening over here, and we are indeed seeing another push out. This is a really good time, too, because, of course, only the one Phalanx was actually sieged. So there goes down that. There's a little bit of interception happening over here, but the Anseal is now indeed out of energy. And, you know, these Dracodins can kind of just focus down the Gorgons with the Panoptises, and that will do the job. It looked like maybe he was attacking his own Phalanx with that. I don't know what that, what exactly that was facing, angle-wise. And he does indeed need to evacuate the Wyverns, but he evacuated this mineral line, too, you can tell, because there's all those corpses. So where was once industry and bedrock, there is now only dead rock. So... yeah, I mean, an economic opener, shall we say, with the treasury first. And yeah, he's obviously enjoying that. I think that might be stuck, but obviously you can lift watchdogs. We need to remodel the watchdog so that it has feet, of course. It'll probably have tiny feet, to be fair, but it will indeed have feet. Now, this time around, there's not going to be an anti-air issue. Obviously, the Valkyries are in. Valkyries are not nearly as powerful as they were in previous versions of CMBW. They have been stat adjusted. They actually lost HP and armor and damage. So pretty much everything about them is a little bit weaker. But that being said, they are still relatively cheap. And as a result, you can definitely see that in action. So pretty good stuff overall. And we will 100% see the Valkyries take to the skies. And there's actually not really anything here besides some Panoptises anyway, so not the end of the world. There is a Sanctum of Sorrow being produced. Charlatans are actually turbo bugged right now. But aside from that, I'm assuming Mind Tyrants are on the way as well. You can take control of some of those higher impact units. And of course, the back base being tickled. This was never really fully saturated, and these workers are just going to evacuate anyway. Looks like they'll be tasked on to the main for now. He's not evacuating the other ones, and he's taking a little bit to start moving around. He will indeed start queuing something as soon as he has the gas for it, presumably. He's lost interest in that because he, of course, has to micro his units. I think he might have been waiting. I feel like he had the resources for that. Maybe he forgot. Oh, there you go. A single Valkyrie getting picked off. There's still 5 more left, and these units are indeed clumping up. They really need to protect the Wyvern, which indeed does have a bit of a busted graphic right now. We're working on it. Or they can focus down the anti-ground such that they can maybe mop things up. But I think that might actually be enough to do it, even though there's plenty of other things. So the GG will be called. And Mask will claim game number 1, a game where nobody used the Nyduses. I was really interested in seeing how the Nyduses would play out. It's cool to see that the map functions as a 1 versus 1 map without them, but maybe in subsequent games we will actually see some play with them. I presume it. I was told it feels downright unfair or unplayable in certain cases. So presumably we're going to see some action in that. Stay tuned. And going straight back into it, game number 2 on Infinite Velocity. There are 4 total. We'll see if I actually cast all 4 of them. That remains to be seen. Now, there has still been some random shenanigans. We have the inverse spawns now, and Mesk is Protoss, while Keyan is Zerg. So I think both players going random. You'll love to see it. Maximum variety. Infinite variety, perhaps. Another thing that starts with IV. So, yeah. I mean, we do have the Nydus still. I'm just reminding everybody, hey guys, the Nydus does exist. Looks like Keyan will be going for some early gas. It's always interesting to me what people like to do with the Zerg build orders because, of course, on a fairly close map, and this map is made close by the Nyduses, you might actually suspect that there's going to be, what would you call it? You might suspect that you look at those Nyduses and you think, okay, what we have here is like a series of reasons to build Quasrock because, yeah, there's not really going to be a crazy amount that you can do there. And paradoxically, ground units are going to reach your enemy's base a lot faster. So the reason why I was pointing out the gas is because unless it's just for like early Larvosk, it's going to be really interesting to see what's going on there. So yeah, not sure about that one. Not sure about that one. Obviously, we are still working on the economic model. In case people don't know, that is, of course, a work in progress, right? Changing up all the mining speeds, changing up a lot of the income rates. Something that was recently suggested by Veek is, as a potential idea, he threw like 30 suggestions at me, but one of the things that I think makes some sense to consider is if we increased base gas income to like, say, 6, there wasn't an exact number specified, but then we make it so that capping the gas, which would obviously not give you 6 anymore, it would give you maybe 8 or something, is actually a tier 2 thing. Then that could be kind of interesting. Obviously, Protoss does prove a little bit difficult for that, and Mesk is demonstrating a little bit why right now, because he can just build a pylon. Now, the Nathracores are rallied over here, so they can just walk over and kill this Scribe. I don't think that's going to be too big of a deal. As soon as the Scribe is dead, you are basically out of the woods, so no worries there. On the other side, there was a low ground gateway. Nobody is using the Nydus. They don't even know it exists, and it looks like Keyan is a little bit too paranoid about the pylon. Obviously, you could have a timing here to send the Nathracores directly over, a Dracoden being rallied. Like, if these Nathracores went over instead of killing the pylon, they would just instantly claim victory, right? There's 6 of them. There's another 2 on the way. There's really nothing over here. So the Warden being placed down there, that's actually a little bit puzzling. I think maybe he wants to make sure that his production is somewhat protected. But versus 6 Naths, it would take crazy micro for 1 Dracoden to kill them. So the question is there going to be a Warden placed, or is there going to be another Dracoden? I would prefer another Dracoden in this situation, because the Nathracores can come in and kill and focus down the Warden before it finishes building, or focus down the pylon and ignore the Dracoden. However, that will obviously give some time for the Naths to get picked off. So it really comes down to target selection. What does Keyan want to do? He is focused on this one. He has not rallied over subsequent Dracodens, or subsequent Nathracores. Yeah, and right here is what I was thinking would happen. He can focus down the Warden. I'm not sure that it was canceled there. And on top of it, he can now start tickling the Dracoden. This is wasting a little bit of time, and he can kite backwards towards the Warden here. But crucially, no Nathracor has gone down. So it's actually really quite difficult here. He's actually somehow avoided getting any of his Scribes killed until just now. So Mesk can start to micro back, use flash shielding to protect himself from this. This is a very tight margin here. There's a lot. Oh, yeah, fuck that Nexus. And yeah, indeed, the pylon going down. That's easy to replace, actually. He can do so right there, and so he does. And losing a first Nathracor, some of them are still beat up quite heavily. Oh, there's a big clump up there, so that was a lot of shared damage, but only one of them going down so far. Pylon finishes in time to welcome the Warden into action, and I don't think these Nathracores are actually going to be able to finish the job now. More of them were not sent over, and 300 minerals in the bank is, of course, the situation that Keyan finds himself in. They did actually kill the Pylon. Of course, it will be repowered, and there's now 2 Dracodens out. Maybe if some of these reinforcements had been away, maybe if some of the resources had been... Oh, wait. Yeah, okay. I was thinking, wait, was it Mesk that had all that money? No, of course it was Keyan. So if some of those had been actual units, like maybe that would have been a little bit different. But he definitely did some economic damage, and he also focused a lot of... Like, he forced a lot of resources into anti-air. Now, on top of it, Mesk has to build, a Warden over here. He feels the need to, double down on resources. And he is sending a couple of units across. There's a decent amount of Zeths. They are async from the Nathracores and the Quasis, so poor unit control could make the difference here. And definitely there needs to be some sort of response. Oh, definitely don't go down there. You will get absolutely owned. Really, really good pullback over here to reduce the surface area, and not great target focus because this Dracoden was pretty close to death. Of course, now it will indeed fall. The other one will, as soon as that Nathracor gets onto it. There it is. And yeah, okay. Bad unit control definitely made the difference here so that Mesk could stay alive with his Dracodens and maybe apply a little bit more pressure. There is a Circuith, and there should be more units on the way, but I say that, there actually aren't. I'm not sure what's up with that. We do have a Gorgorcore coming out alongside some Naths, and there presumably will be... this should actually turn into a Larvosk so he can spend his money, but I worry that maybe he's going to feel pressured into building a Circuith with it. The Zeths plus this Circuith should definitely zone the Dracodens away from doing anything, especially since there should be more on the way. There's No shields already on the forward Dracodon, so it will have to... Yeah, this is a little bit rough. If he responded immediately, then it could have been a little bit different. Again, not focusing down the Dracodon that has low HP. So now, you know, if he had focused all of his damage, he probably... Yeah, he would have actually killed this Dracodon, it looks like. But it looks like instead he'll just divide and conquer, apparently. So no worries there. Meanwhile, this Dracodon getting tickled down quite heavily damaged here. Only 26 HP left. And yeah, of course, a couple of additional Zethar cores. Definitely don't want to throw them away. Maybe turn them into Vorvs. Transfer some of these workers to your other base for better efficiency anyway. And you can certainly keep yourself alive here. Now, that is indeed has indeed turned into a Larvosk, so he should be moving these workers, maybe borrowing them to force the Dracodons to come forward if they want to deal more damage. And yeah, there's not really going to be a crazy amount of micro over here either. He's trying to kill the Gorgor, and ooh, there's not really great movement from that. Oh man, just barely. I don't know what the hell the Zeths were doing. They were probably tasked onto the Geyser or something in a panic. But despite all of the damage, despite all of the worker kills and the Zeth kills and putting so much damage onto the Gorg, Keyan stays alive, and yeah, Mesk does indeed have his Dracodons fall, going into a Grand Library behind this. Now, economically speaking, Keyan is ahead, has 3 less workers, but obviously the base means that his workers are actually giving more value. So he's got plenty of minerals, he can continue to produce plenty of Zeths, and etc. So he's actually got more than a control group already, does have another Gorgor core on the way. I'm actually kind of surprised because this patch made Lakissilisks only 75 gas. I'm really surprised we aren't seeing more of them, especially since this map starts with double Geyser in the main. So that actually gives you a lot of income that you can use to your advantage over time. So that's another thing that when we were talking about economic model, right? It's another thing to think about too, is like, hey, we have this idea that maybe we can do like this thing to change up the eco and like do a better, superior thing or whatever. But on top of all that, it's like we also have so many different maps. We have so many different styles of maps. We have so many different resource, placements and whatnot. So it's quite interesting and certainly quite different. As we get a little bit deeper into this, though, we can obviously see that Mesk intends to expand. He's dropped down a Nexus. More workers happening. Now the Zerg's stretching ahead in worker count and not really doing much harvesting, right? He's harvesting from the Ridge, but not the Geyser. He's correcting that error now. No capping. And only 1 guy on gas in the main, so definitely won't be too many gas units coming out from Keyan. He has this K-Green here. I think this is a really good placement versus Dracodons, because I don't know if they can even squeeze between this. It's a little bit deceptive because we've obviously changed a lot of sizes in CMBW. And now over here, we have Mesk realizing, hey, there is indeed a Nydus. I think he was attacking it. You can do a move command to get through there. I don't think right-clicking it should cause it to attack either, so yeah. Let's see what he does. He's discovering, he's like, wait, I can use this. Yes, Mesk. It is usable. Just watching players like try to figure out what the hell's going on is with some of these ideas is just glorious. Keyan playing a bit of a defensive game, but he does have enough Zethar cores to make a huge issue out of this. The Atriuses do pretty well against them, but if you have some Vorvs, you can slow them down and surround them. That can give time for the rest of the Zeths to do their thing. And of course, like the fact that you can use the Nydus to flood in does mean it can be really, really challenging to respond to that. Now, there's a Warden going down there, but that's just easy to pick off with the number of Zeths that he has. If the Atriuses are out of position, you can also catch them, like, very, very dangerous. But Keyan wants to be the honorable man and go the default approach. The Atriuses are still in the main, so we obviously will see... actually, we're going to see a Worker Scout come out. This will reveal the army beforehand, so that's pretty solid. I thought maybe Mesk would be going down for like a hidden base or something. Instead, he's actually just going to run face first into all of these Zeths to reveal the attack. He should see a couple of the... definitely more than a couple, and so he should bring down his Atriuses. I'm not sure when Keyan will pull the trigger on this, though, and if he'll do so without also first getting some Vorvs. It looks like he wants to go right now, so the Zealots should be very easily dealt with. There is that wounded Gorgor core. I think it was taking some damage, but it looks like maybe it's still alive. Not going for the surround on the Striders is definitely a big no-no. I mean, okay, the gateway is a big deal, but you're giving him so many opportunities to chew through all of the Zeths. So I think, again, poor target selection from Keyan. He could have just walked over and did so much damage to the Strider count and then maybe depowered the gateway on the way out to prevent any additional units. So doesn't lose a Gorger Core from the Warden, which is nice. There is a Cantavis available, so that will be plenty of storms. And, I mean, Keyan should feel somewhat confident that he's able to, do some eco damage. He's now getting rid of even more of the units and structures. He has to be a little bit wary, but that Cantavis can be focused down. And obviously with melee units, yep, exactly what we were expecting. So it will indeed go down. That's a decent amount of gas for exactly no gain. So that was good target selection there. Good pick from Keyan. He can obviously continue sort of working around the outskirts, causing chaos. There are more Wardens being built. Back at home for Keyan, he has even more Gorger Cores, but 1,800 minerals for a moment there, and definitely needs to spend that money. Still no tech up, so obviously no capped geysers. He does have double saturation on everything, so there is at least that, and he's recalling the 2 Gorgs home after his relatively successful campaign. Could have been more successful, could have charged in when there were no defenses at this base and absolutely wrecked the scribes and stuff, but I'm not even sure that his Zeths went deep enough to know that there was a base here, and it's just that he scouted back here and thought, oh, okay, there is no base in that direction. So I like this Hatrosk placement. Of course, it will get tickled by some Drakodons, but the Lekizalisks should zone that out and then force an embassy. Let's see what the response time is. Let's see what the response time is. There it is. Okay. All right. The Gorgs are also here, so this will be a pretty big mistake for Mesk to respond. He's even getting tickled on the back end. Yeah, focusing down the Atriuses makes sense. Obviously, they are the splash and also a little bit more durable anyway. So considering the comp that Mesk has gone for, or that Keyan has gone for, rather, then that's definitely something that you got to keep in mind. So obviously, Mesk will continue saturating his bases. He'll continue producing units, but he only has the Grand Library for production right now. So even though he's got 2 bases, he can't really affect too much change on the map. He doesn't really have unit production capabilities. So if Keyan were to strike once again as he takes this 3rd base, that would be a huge deal. And certainly something that you have to imagine would be a pretty big... Definitely something you want to do, right? He's spending a lot of gas on Gorgs, on the Lekizalisks, so clearly he doesn't actually want to tech up anytime soon. He can definitely continue dropping Hatrosks, spread the creep, get more larvae, get himself the coveted extra bases and additional unit production, obviously. So, would be nice and lovely and all those, great things to see more out of that. But still, yeah, it's been so long, and yeah, I mean, I say so long, obviously it's been like a minute since I've made the observation, but for a long time since this gateway was sniped, the only production that Mesk has had is this 1 Grand Library, and instead of adding more production, he's doing something very greedy and very risky. He's taking an extra base. So he wants to like delay even further to scale up, and that just basically means that if Keyan attacks, he's probably dead. Keyan has way more production, he has way more money in the bank, he has way more harvesting going on, even though they have even workers because of the different bases. Keyan can obviously like use his idle workers, that would help, but he's working on that, right? So we'll go ahead and saturate the gas. That is, of course, his main limiting factor right now. And so, yeah, he just needs to continue tasking his workers on and stuff. So I'm really quite surprised that Mesk hasn't added more production. He will go ahead and get another Grand Library for now. He is also producing the capped for the geysers and, of course, another Cantavis, helping with all those crowds, all the stacked air. And yeah, okay, Keyan is moving out. So this is not as big of a force as you would expect for how much money he has, how many Hatrosks he has, and then, of course, how many bases he has, how much time it's been. But it should still be enough to cause some headaches, right? There's only a couple Atriuses, right? There's only a trio, a 3. And I think Keyan might have expected there to be another base, but there isn't one. He's going to go ahead and scout with his Gorgs. He can run in here, but there are 4 Wardens in place, so I don't think he can do too much damage. He shouldn't be looking for harassment. He should be looking to just run over Mesk's position. And that's definitely the main thing that needs to be done here. So as the Gorgs come in, they will indeed just be forcing down the Wardens. The pylon actually slowing things down quite a bit, but I guess the Wardens will indeed be brute force down. The other units definitely need to come back in here, but I don't think he's aware that his units are not responding. or not doing anything right now. He definitely needs to hit, 1A, 2A, or whatever it is. It's for grid hockeys, it's 1E, 2E. And so there's a good storm, dealing some pretty good damage. There can be another one be sent out, but it looks like instead... Well, where's the third Atreus? Was the third Atreus not brought down? It looks like it wasn't, so that could be a critical failure for Mesk here if he's not on task. Going after the workers, I mean, it makes sense, but right now, every single unit that Mesk loses is a loss that he can't easily replace because of his low production. So I do think that what Keyan needs to do is just flood more units right now. He's got so much money and so much larva, but he doesn't really have that many units to continue the attack once this force is eventually cleaned up. So... he will wisely fall back, but then he's decided he wants to go back in. Again, you can overwhelm the Atreus, right? It's not an impossible task. Unfortunately, one of the Gorgs will fall, which is a pretty big DPS loss. And still, I look back over here, I still don't see any larvae turning into eggs, which in turn, of course, turn into units. Very important stuff, and I don't think it's really going to happen. It looks like maybe he took his attention away from the... front lines just in time to queue up a couple of units. But again, he has so much money, and he's pulled back to conserve these 3 Gorgs, right? At this point, this is definitely the time where if you were coaching a player in RTS, you would just say, listen, man, you can, when you're good enough to do all of the macro stuff, you can do the exciting micro stuff too. But don't do the micro stuff at expense of the macro stuff. Definitely don't do that. Spend the money. It's a task, and it's a lesson that we all need to learn. And we all need to remember. The Iral Iris is going down, so that's where all of his gas went. He has almost 3,000 minerals. He can put down, 5 extra hatches just so that he has plenty of space to spend that money. Meanwhile, Mesk will slowly rebuild his army of Atreuses, and he's added 2 Stargates. He is protecting this base against air attacks. That's fine. But realistically speaking, this is the big ticket item here. If he can hold on to this base, then... that's more like the one that's more likely to be harassed and killed. And now Vorvs are coming. So this is actually a really big moment for Keyan, I think. If he can manage to do this, then he can manage to do, take a game in this series that is going on for surprisingly long amounts of time without anybody using the fucking Nydus. What the hell's wrong with you guys? So I don't know what's going on there, but slowly coming back with worker counts. Obviously, the fact that the Zerg doesn't have that many workers on this base might actually be holding him back in the long run. He does, of course, have, almost full saturation on these, but he's not capping. He hasn't capped a single geyser, and he's only on 3 bases. Like, maybe that's acceptable if you have, 5 bases, and you're just going for, like, a power push, and you don't want to bother spending the APM and the resources, but... All right, in this case, he's actually not keeping any Zeths around. Normally, I would say this is a mistake because, we have regression, so they will turn back into Zeths if you give them enough time and space. The problem is, in this particular capacity, you're fighting against Protoss, right? Protoss, your Zeths aren't going to be doing the damage anyway. They have a pretty good armor pen, but the Vorvs are going to, surround them, slow them down, stay alive for a decent amount of time, and the attack move is indeed coming in. The Izira Core is on top of it. Not a bad move. The Gorgs are actually going to be a surprising amount of the DPS here, so we really need to pay attention to the placement and the general unit sort of the setup here for the units, right? Like, does he have good response time? Now, there is a witness scouting this attack. So the Atreuses and the single land effect are 100% going to need to fall back. The Gorgs actually are going to have a hard time dealing with the land effect. There's not really any ranged units here. And look at this. We do have one of the Atreuses having been totally slowed down. Cannot progress. And yeah, here we go. The splash damage coming in. Now there's Zeths, so they can do a little bit more DPS. There is a Crucible infusing these 2 matrices. And look at that. Okay, if the Izzy's focus down the land effect, we might see some early heartache here. It's taking a little bit of bouncing damage. It's now it's taking a couple of shots. Yep, there it goes. It will indeed fall. Meanwhile, the Gorger Cores and some Skits were over here wiping out the defenses, overwhelming Mesk on multiple fronts, and now focusing down the defenses inside the main as the Izzies stomp up there to slow down reinforcements. So both bases having totally evaporated in terms of the worker counts, right? This one is actually just going to go down wholesale. The Nexus will not survive. And also the workers in his main down to 15 workers and dropping as even more damage is done. So I don't know that Mesk can recover from this position. I think it's very clear Keyan has taken a little bit of time to get here, but he has 100% won the day for this particular match. Killing the Nexus in the main, killing the Nexus in the Nat, killing the Nexus in the third. It's all over. And I'm not sure that Mesk even knows. He has rebuilt his Nexus, but if that one falls, if he cancels it, he's just not going to have enough money to rebuild anyway. The Izzies are actually being shut down by the placement of the land effect. That's not bad. And unfortunately, they do get moved forward. Okay. And there you go, Mesk indeed GGing out. He had no idea that he was getting attacked on multiple fronts. Well, wouldn't you know it? I mean, that's the surprise factor, I guess. So yeah, responding to one threat, that was already looking a little bit suspicious, but trying to respond to all that, I guess that's what happens when you let your opponent float for like, a good amount of time, and then eventually he spends the money. So let's see what game number 3 has in store for us. We're all tied up 1-1 in this longer than expected series of matches on Infinite Velocity. Now, Keyan is back to his position from game number 1 on the right-hand side. And Mesk is still Protoss, and Keyan is still Zerg. They just have different spawns. Will we see a fast move from the Nydus? At least these games have gone on long enough for there to be a little bit of back and forth, ebb and flow. But definitely a little bit more on the passive side from both players, right? We haven't really seen anything too aggro, nothing Shambler-esque, nothing me-esque, where you just try to keep, pressing advantages. And even when there have been advantages that have been pressed, still not exactly spectacular results. At least it takes a little while. So, but yeah, good on Keyan for overwhelming. I was expecting him to go everywhere at once, just immediately push all of his units into the front. So that's pretty cool to see that he was able to actually get pretty good target selection on his attack forces. And I'm really surprised, actually, that the Gorgs and Skiths did as well as they did and still had so many from the static defense. I think maybe it's because whatever units may have been over there in this back base up here were evacuated to deal with the frontline threat. So, good pacing and all that stuff. Speaking of pacing, we do have a Hydrock Den opener and a Lattice opener. So we are seeing something different from both players already. Interesting. I always like to see a little bit more variety. I always like to see people coming up with their own ways to fit everything in. It should be noted, though, that while you can maybe last a little bit with only Quasrock units, I wouldn't necessarily advise it, to be fair, but it is technically possible. I'm not sure you can do the same thing with Hydrock, at least not on one base. So we're going to see that whether that comes to fruition here. Another pylon going down, just as a way to set the panic in. This scout is actually a little bit earlier than before, right? There was no, there was no Quasrock done or whatever. It was already finished, and some units were already coming out by the time the scribe was put together. So saving up for the Warden, the correct answer for this is just to put 2 workers on it, and that will be enough. You can send another worker to kill the scribe, and it looks like that you should instantly task these back on. So this is what Keyan is doing is totally fine in this response. He just has to not panic, basically. And he can even use the Hydralisk to execute the scribe. And as long as he's got another one coming, the subsequent vassals should not pose much of a threat. A second lattice going down, and that means that maybe there will be a bit of a transition away from vassals and into sims. Now, neither of these units come out 2 at a time anymore. We decided to make that a Zerg-only aesthetic. I don't know why Keyan is using his workers to clear this instead of harvesting. That's a big mistake, actually. He lost a lot of mining time. I don't know if he just didn't want to reveal his second Hydra or something. I think the pylon could have seen it anyway. Maybe it was just a brain fart. Either way, there will not be a move out from either player just yet, although... Yeah, okay, never mind. The Hydras are moving out, but they aren't using the Nydus, so that's its own silly thing. They still don't know about the fucking Nydus. I wonder if maybe they played a bunch of games and they just like made a decision that the Nydus is silly and shouldn't be used or something. I don't know. I have no idea what happened there. I'm sure there will be some explanations in the comments. But I think the Hydras moving up here, they should be more than capable of dealing with this set of units. I think once the extra sims come in, you factor in cliff advantage. 4 Hydras might not be enough in that particular situation, right? So that's something else to think about. There is also a defensive warden being put down for anti-air. And maybe if if the vassals just leave, that could definitely work out pretty well. Unfortunately, moving back and not finishing off that sim does mean that it survives with only 4 HP. He's going to go ahead and burrow and try to focus down. What is he focusing down? He's not focusing down much of anything right now. So, yeah, a bit awkward. Could focus down the low HP sims. I noticed that some players don't actually click the other units just to see what they are. I know it's kind of annoying we don't have some way to just draw health bars on the screen globally. That's something we do want to do eventually. And look, these vassals are actually getting desync, so he can just turn and fight these if he wants to, pick off one of the vassals and then continue falling back. But it doesn't look like he's interested in doing that. Back at home, he does have 2 more Hydras, and he has presumably, 2 more on the way. I thought maybe that would be 3, but that would be 3, so you can't have 3. And I think on top of it all, with this base not really being contributing, He hasn't transferred any workers over or anything. So 6 Hydras are definitely going to be more than enough to deal with this, though. I wouldn't be too worried. He can, especially if he starts picking off the vassals ahead of time. The vassals are actually a surprisingly important part of this puzzle because when they die, they are providing that combat buff. So if one of them dies without actually enchanting anything, that is a pretty big deal. So it looks like now Mesk's units will be running all the way back, and the vassals will indeed be picked off. And now there is going to be an attempt at turning. You can tell it's not really working out too well. I think maybe Keyan thought there was going to be a focus. He's really fucking himself with the fancy move attempts. He's lost 2 Hydras. I think he only really needed to lose 1 there, or maybe 0 with good micro. And yeah, killed by the decollision. Some more Hydras than maybe Mesk was hoping for. The Sims are, still formidable in terms of their numbers. And the lower attack rate for the Hydras is not really helping their cause here. There will be a Zorkiz, so I think maybe he's going to transition into like Izzy-fueled, or he could be going Zorius, with the minerals. I'm trying to think about like what he would spend his minerals on, because obviously a lot of his gas would be dedicated to Hydras. If he wants to go Lakizalisk, he can probably mix in a couple extra Hydras, but for the most part use Izzy's as the front line and then use the Lakizalisks. Lakizalisks do deal really, really well with Sims, because I mean, on the one hand, you can try to like bait it out. It's a huge APM drain to do that, just so that you can benefit from the passive. But if you have like, other units blocking them from doing such a thing, the crowd control is just immense. And it works super well against Manifolds as well. So this Sim scouting out, basically. I mean, you could just move through and then... Oh, he's actually going to attack it. Okay, so he's not interested in using it. That's really interesting. Maybe he's... Is he just now realizing he can use it? Yeah, okay. He's figured it out. And there's no defenses over here, so I think I know which way the wind is blowing on this one. The Hydra's coming in here. There's going to be 1 Warden, and the other one will not exactly be finished immediately. So that's assuming Keyan just goes straight for it. I think maybe he might predict that there would be more units over here, but yeah, this is... I can already imagine there's going to be some salt over here. Rocking the shields, just giving him 4 more Sims that are fairly healthy, actually. Yeah, yeah, just give him some more. Oh, Jesus. Well, what can he do? The second Warden's already finished, so this is going to get ugly. Some more units finishing as well. It's certainly not going to help things. It's a disaster. He does not have nearly as many units as he actually needs in this case, I think, but he can at least give the, say the effort was made. And the GG is called. So that's like the least climactic and interesting way you can have the Nydus work, I think, is just, the timing. Because there was no awareness, right? So, yeah, unfortunate. But let's jump right into the next game then and see what we got for us. So, meanwhile, of course... We have the same spawns and different colors, but the same matchup. So I'm still thinking these guys are random the whole way through, but maybe Keyan sometimes does like to actually pick Zerg, so maybe that was happening. I don't think Mesk really likes to pick a race usually. He likes to just go straight random every time. So far, there's an opportunity for Keyan to tie things up, maybe do something silly with the final game using that Nydus now that it was used against him. I selected this and then thought I selected a Droleth, but really it was just because I had an egg selected and it turned into a Droleth, and at the perfect time. It really perplexed me. I was like, what? Another bug? No, actually not. But something we do want to do eventually is add the opportunity for group selecting units in witness mode, and then ideally color coding the wireframes, maybe using the same thing that normally works for heroes. That would be pretty neat, I think. Now, this is a little bit risky for Keyan to go for an Expo first on a map like this, but if he knows his opponent is Protoss, it becomes a little bit more manageable. He will be going for that Expo, hatch down and the back base, and I like that Mesk has gone for the initial move to put the pylon here. This is important because if he does get absolutely owned, because Keyan just used this against him, he wants to be sure that he's not going to get killed, basically. I don't think you can click on this through the Fog of War, right? So it looks like here there will be a proxy base of some kind. I mean, it doesn't really change you can rally through this if you have active vision of it. So actually building a pylon over here would make sense. Instead he built it on Keyan's side, so that's something. Also, if you put wardens down here, you can snipe units that are trying to exit on the ground, so that's actually a pretty big deal. I think maybe that's exactly what he's thinking. He's also just going to prevent and make sure that Keyan isn't like using this for free, I guess. But if he's got fast enough units, it won't matter too much. There's a Quasarek indeed going down. We saw the Cenotaph opener. That means that, you know, Mesk has a little bit of gas. And he's obviously spent a lot of money already, 200 minerals, just to put the pylon and warden down. And yeah, what's Keyan's game plan? We're kind of in his head because he's the only person we can see the screen position of. So we see that he's mostly just paying attention. He's not interested in scouting. He's paying attention to his own base, his own stuff. Players really don't like transferring workers, it seems. This is a really important point, though. If you transfer like 5-6 workers when your base finishes, you'll get a significant advantage in money. So that worker getting tickled quite a bit. Only a few hits before death. I'm not sure that he's going to save it, actually. Okay, he will barely save it. I think maybe got lost in the sauce a little bit there, did Mesk. What's the play? Looks like Hierophants, Legionnaires. Not a crazy amount of units. Definitely, controllable. And it looks like, indeed, the Scribe will be killed. Can't move fast enough. I feel like maybe Keyan just doesn't know about, props to the Scribe for delaying that for as long as he did. I don't know that Keyan knows about the Nydus. Like, I wonder how does he think that it was drops or something? Like, I just don't know. I mean, I look at the minimap, I see the dots that they draw my attention immediately. You know, I think, oh shit, there's probably a Nydus there, or there's something there I should check out. So what's going on there? And yeah, so not sure what's going on there. Not sure. And maybe Keyan doesn't know either. Couple Vorvs, pretty big deal, actually. He can kill this Warden and deny vision if he wants to, so that it could be used at any point. He can obviously just charge forward through the front. But the problem is, as soon as these Vorvs get spotted by the Warden, yeah, unless they automatically path towards the perfect concave. I don't know if Mesk saw that with his vision. I think it's pretty clear that he must have, because he gets so much vision from the Warden, right? So the sight range is 11 on the Warden. It's a pretty big deal. So he is going to see this. A Dracoden on the way. Not the best, but, good DPS, I guess. I think this attack will be reposted with the units that are coming out here. The third Legionnaire should finish, but it really depends on if the Vorvs stay alive long enough. If they can stay alive to surround some of the Hierophants, you can definitely pick those apart. But he's front-loading with the Zeths, so that's not too solid just yet. And one of the Vorvs already going down before they can get the complete surround. So one of the Hierophants will go down. And at this point, yeah, trying to focus down those Hierophants, it's the right play, but unfortunately his unit's kind of getting in his own way, and he's not really microing them either. So that will indeed be the only casualty of the fight for Mesk, is the one single Hierophant. And that was not a negligible amount of resources invested into that, right? We're thinking, I want to say that was like 10 or maybe 12 units in total, which is 6 packs of Zethra cores at 500 apiece, and then the Vorver cores themselves are 75, I believe now. So pretty big deal. Now the Nydus coming into fruition. There are 2 circuits here, so that shouldn't be too terrible. Morphing the Vorvs immediately is maybe a bold move. They don't morph that fast, so this is actually a pretty big mistake here by Keyan. He is going to have to cancel those, surely. Coming in with some more reinforcements, but not really focusing on trying to, pull them back towards the circuits. Okay, he is able to get them all off and surround the Dracoden, but he loses all of his DPS, so this is a little bit awkward. And yeah, he doesn't want to take the excess fights here. He still he doesn't know about the Warden, remember. He has no idea about the Warden yet. So as he's taking this third base, this force will be cleared up. There's not going to be too many casualties there, I don't think. But if he ever moves out of his base and then doesn't really pay attention, like, this Warden will cause his units to start spinning and going back around. So that's actually a pretty big deal. Decides to, increase the worker count. I don't hate the idea, but you just need way more larvae than this. Like, he has no Larvosks, he has no, macro hatches. He's definitely in a tough spot here, production-wise. But then so is Mesk. I mean, Mesk has, what? This finally does get discovered, by the way, so that's good. It's a little bit awkward in the approach, but he only loses 2 Zeths, so not the end of the world, clearing that up quite easily. Meanwhile, another unit just sort of like walking around, confirming this is still just what he's got. Now, he doesn't know about whether or not Mesk has another base. We know that Mesk does not have another base, so that's actually a pretty big deal. And it looks like maybe a unit snuck in through here just to scout and see what it is. So Keyan is now aware of the Nydus. We are now seeing Keyan's awareness grow in real time as he continues to make workers. He's in a fairly stable position because Mesk only now is taking another base, only has 2 production structures, can't actually remax, get to a high level of army count very quickly at all. Whereas, there's slowly this procedure of expanding the tech and stuff, expanding the production. And we do indeed see the double cap coming in as well. So that'll be great. Keyan has 0 gas mined so far, by the way. So I think he's getting about ready to spike. Now, as Zerg, you can do this because, you have a pretty good setup here. And it looks like, at this point, Mesk not interested in the Nydus. So let it be known, there were so many more things that you could have done with the way that this game went and the way that this series went. This map has so much silliness potential. Like, I really want to see more stuff on this map just to see how players deal with it. Again, maybe the absolute early game, like you can just scout super early, like you can scout later than you normally do and get it at the same timing because of the Nydus. So that probably should be addressed, and maybe that's like the hallucination block or whatever to make it so that the Nydus is inaccessible in the early game. I don't know. I don't know what the details would look like. Maybe it's fine as it is. But I still feel like I look at that and I think, man, like there's so many interesting things that you could do, and I don't know if they'd be any good. Like maybe they'd be terrible, but definitely something that I think is a big deal and a good thing to think about for sure. So, I'm glad that it exists as an experiment. I'll put it to you that way. Getting a Hydrock Den now. Keyan augmenting his army. Does indeed have gas mining at the natural. Nothing on the ridge, but it's not a huge issue. And still very limited workers over here. He will saturate the geyser. Maybe order a couple more workers. Again, very loath to transfer. Looks like Mesk is in the same boat. So he's rallying workers from his other production queues, which is pretty much the same thing that Keyan is doing. Sequestered Icon is the 3rd production structure of choice for Mesk. Now, again, he has so little production, I don't think he's going to be able to keep up with what he's got. And it looks like, Keyan might be disappointed when he comes over here and sees that there's nothing there because it was destroyed. I'm not even sure if the rubble will still be there. He hasn't cited that yet, so he has no way of confirming yet what exactly happened to it. But when he remembers that mechanic anyway, he'll know, oh, yes, of course. I guess something that could be cheeky is if you... I mean, I don't know, it would probably make it 2Z advantaged, but if you actually had creep over here, and then you just, replace the Nydus yourself later. Could be funny anyway, I don't know. By the way, Nydus is now IRL only. I mean, enabled by IRL, so you can get it earlier than you did before. I might push it back to Auth still if it ends up being too powerful, because I do feel like there's a reason why it was tier 3 in Starcraft 1. There's a reason why it was gated behind Hive Tech. So Zerg might end up being a little bit too imposing. And I did actually end up nerfing their worker training time a little bit, so they're 14 instead of 15. Still better than the other races, but they were 12 before. So I felt like that you were just getting way too many workers way too quickly, considering you already have the larva advantage, which is a disadvantage in the early stages of the game, but it becomes so powerful when you use it well and when you scale up. So just part of the beauty of the original StarCraft that we're trying to preserve in this mod and expand upon. Speaking of expanding upon, we have a 4th base. This is gas only. I actually haven't seen this one yet. This is really interesting stuff. So we end up getting to see an attempt, anyway, at expanding out. Always nice. Vorv's being made. A very beefy front line. Nothing really to back it up, just quasis so far. Has enough gas now to take the eye roll. Certainly has enough idle workers to continue saturating his base. Did cap everything except for the one in the back base, which is actually his natural, and there is the eye roll. Out in a very vulnerable position, it should be said. He still hasn't confirmed that this Nydus isn't there, so... I don't know. What is the... I wonder what the idea is. Just, I don't know. It's just interesting. It's just like Keyan's lackadaisical approach. He's like, yeah, whatever. Maybe he does know somehow and it just doesn't sync to the replay, but I'm pretty sure when it dies, you don't get a notification or anything. It's just dead. So he should definitely increase saturation for his gas down here in this base. We'll see if he recognizes that or is aware of that. Right now he's macroing up in another area. And yeah, we'll see. Just expanding around the vision, there's still some Nydus over here that transfers you over to that base. And there also are actually island bases over here, which is kind of neat. So, putting a pylon down, yep, makes sense. Moving zealots around just to get information. A very passive game to close this out here today. But I'm sure there will be some sort of explosion. Sequestered Icon for the Architects. Very expensive units, but they're very good at siege units. And when I said that was a fourth base down there in the gas only, I guess I actually meant that it was the third because I thought Mesk had already taken this. He has not. So still actually quite behind his opponent, economically speaking. And Keyan is even looking to take yet another base. He'll actually find the scribe scouting around here, which is always a little bit suspicious because, you know, Protoss can just build anywhere once they get the pylons down. So, but he hasn't actually noticed it, which is a bit silly. Now, this base will actually be denied by the scribe unless he just doesn't see the worker. What the fuck? Okay, great. Well, some Naths, some Hydras. What else can happen anyway? Calculusks. Okay, so we do indeed have the tech app complete. And we have this capped but not fully saturated. The same is still said for this base over here. And gas seems to be the limiting factor. More quasis. Can turn those into wiggles. Taking another base, taking another base. I'm liking the position for Keyan. I think he has more than enough to break through the military that Mesk has. It will come down to micro, of course, and army positioning. So if he wanted to go on the offensive from here, I would definitely condone that. I would say, you know, gold star. Get it done. Of course, there's stuff that could be improved. You know, he's still floating a lot of minerals. He could be taking even more bases. He is starting to. And he could obviously be adding more macro hatches so that he can, like, rally out more units. It is a little bit of a difficult thing to balance in CMBW because you want to have a certain amount of resources. And, like, you obviously need to save for tech up, save for general tech acquisition. You have to save for all of that stuff. But it can bite you in the ass if you're going to end up in a situation where the overall, like, amount of resources you have to spend is not in keeping with the amount of production you have. You can build too many Hatcherosks, basically. So, actually, that pylon may have saved some of Keyan's army, but maybe not. I think the army is actually really out of sync here. A bunch of Wardens over here. This was tickling that base, and yeah, this will be cleaned up immediately. Revealing what he has for tech, so maybe a little bit of an advantage squandered there. Not really the end of the world. I mean, you could expect, actually, that there would be a lot of units there. And some of the architects are really out of sync here. This one could end up getting lost. They are ground units now, so they do not hover anymore. Definitely increases the amount of effort you have to expend to move them around in a few places, but maybe we'll just shrink their collision size slightly or something. Eventually, I'll have, you know, a custom sprite for them, obviously, but make them a little bit more size appropriate. Adding Grand Library, still not crazy amounts of production, but he does have, I think, what, 4 or 5 architects, and he's adding way more Wardens. So he'll be able to defend himself with these Crucibles, and I think the architects are going to be in a, you know, in the back line safely, able to riposte any attacks. This Crucible hasn't really given a lot of value. It's just one guy harvesting this whole time, but it's also really difficult to get back here, right? You can flank all the way around down like this, but that is about it. The Calculusks are going to go ahead for a raid. There are some Wardens over here, so he probably doesn't want to deal with that directly, but he can maybe start tickling the production, getting some of the units out of position for the frontal attack, and we'll see what Keyan actually wants to do. We always like to be on the offensive here, but there's a lot of Wardens, so we're going to have to see how that works out. They are being tied up by the Calculusks down here, which of course turn back into Nats after they die now. And yeah, the rest of the army is slowly trickling in. Only 2 Wardens being picked off so far. Some Drakodons lost. I say some, it's very limited actually. But yeah, I think this attack has mostly been riposted. The Architect's obviously able to just sort of fall back for now, and the Bactylisk's not really doing a crazy amount of damage to them either. So maybe one of them ends up dying here, but I don't think so. He'll survive with pretty much everything intact. Now, there's 5,000 resources in the bank from Keyan. Good grief. It will indeed be morphing more Calculusks. They actually did a pretty good amount of damage. It's just that they didn't have anything, you know, distracting the Wardens, so the Wardens were able to just pick them off, and there was also an Architect back here and stuff, so not the best move. But, you know, despite Keyan losing a lot of units there, he can instantaneously remax because of all of his money. There is an Archon Archives, or Ancestral Archives, actually, but it trains Archons, and it trains Optectons and Patriarchs. Optecton will be the unit of choice. Not very good against Calculusks because air units do not take damage from the primary attack. They don't get attacked at all. We do have the tier 2 defenses being put together here, and some Tethzoricors coming out. They don't have a passive just yet, but they will eventually. This Iziricor spotting the move out, so it's probably a mistake, but it's actually, you know, a good one here. It ends up helping Keyan out because he recognizes where those units are. He doesn't have any defenses down here, so that one Zealot getting a lot of value, but also reminding his opponent that this base exists. I think Keyan probably forgot about that, so. and confirming that the Calculusk does indeed exist as well. I would be really scared for these architects going up against the calcs. So you can move right on them. When they die, they turn into gnats, which obviously move right on them as well. So depending on their movements here, I don't know if they'll see... I don't think they'll see the Hierophants here. So no response there from Keyan. The Scribe may actually catch wind of this attack. In fact, it of course will. So there is that. Not interested in killing it. They're just like, all right, see ya. And I'm sure Mesk saw that. It's just a question of whether or not he can do much to respond to it. He's now set up some infrastructure over here and sent down an extra worker. He's transferring some down at the perfect time for Keyan to kill it. And it looks like he indeed will discover it. So there you go. This army moving down here to try to tickle this base. The Architects can outrange the Scorchriths, so shouldn't have any worries there. Unfortunately, all the workers just now arriving to be killed. And yeah, one of the Hierophants already went down to the Scorchriths. They are quite deadly. But that won't be a huge issue. The Calcs are obviously out of position at this point, so... What a lovely sound they make. Now, honestly, at the same time, these Teths could run down here and start chasing the Architects. Obviously, the fact that they don't hover anymore means that ground melee units are a little bit better at dealing with them. The Archon is a scary one, and so is the Atreus, for that matter. So definitely have to be a little bit careful about that, but can come straight up here and start tickling the main. And I think that this is anticipated by the Atreus movements. So that's not too bad. And of course, now can just sort of run circles around them, right? So off they go. Starting to cause some issues with the Scribes. There's a decent amount of worker kills over here. No response elsewhere on the map. Focusing down, just trying to kill this base. And look at this. They're getting caught and stuck inside the workers, and it's just lovely Brood War pathing for you. I think that might actually allow him to finish this Nexus off. Especially since the Atreus's were initially tasked onto the... Oh no. Oh no, he doesn't realize. Oh no, interception. Getting caught by the Nexus there, funnily enough. But don't worry, that just creates a bunch of gnats that the Atreus's have to micro back from. Not great target selection here from Keyan yet again. He might not actually kill a single Atreus. There we go. One of them doesn't finally pop. And that will have to be a lesson to him. Oh yeah, meanwhile, all the Architects died. A very sad death. I don't think they were actually more dangerous. It's just the fact that they were stuck on top of the Nexus. If Keyan moved past the Nexus, he would have just killed the Atreus's immediately. So... I think that's a bit of a misread on what they actually do. Probably doesn't remember that the passive is that they their projectile is intercepted by the first hit, basically. So that's how it works. I think their passive icon actually might lie right now and say the old passive, but whatever. Well, a lot more Wardens. Losing the gas base does hurt, but it doesn't hurt that much exactly because Mesk didn't really saturate it, so he doesn't really know what's up with that. There were a couple of lost units over there, so I think maybe at least one is Azure died, but they basically had no front line, right? So that Architect attack did not end up being super successful. Can't really flank around. Like, I guess you could have stationed him over here and then try to get vision up the cliff. That could have been quite abusive if you managed to come all the way down. Of course, the Calculusks would have been able to respond, but that would have been maybe an angle to take, and also maybe something to worry about map design-wise, but what are you going to do? Just watch these units spin. There you go, he made it down. Very important. All right, so some more defensive structures being placed over here. There's so many Calculusks and so few actual units over here. There is a decent amount of splash. The Archons and the Atreus's sort of working quite well, I think. But just this many Calculusks, I don't think it's possible for Keyan to end up getting killed here. It depends on how long it takes the... Oh, look at this. He thinks maybe there's a base up here, but there is not. It really depends on how long Mesk takes to initiate the attack. But I still don't think he's going to be able to do too much damage at all. The Obtecton, only one of them, it can survive a decent amount of time. It has a lot of stats, but, it can get run down by the Teths, it can get surrounded by the Vorvs, and of course it can get picked apart by the Calcs. So, selection limit is going to be the biggest nemesis here for Keyan. And as soon as the units over here reveal themselves by attacking, he can respond with these Calcs, and he'll be just fine. The space being taken, and workers already being sent down to saturate it. Not a bad move. Here come the Calcs. And the Archons are not in a good spot to respond. Now they are, but a little bit of awkward movement. You can see they stay alive quite a bit, and they are doing a lot of damage, but there's just so many Calcs, right? I don't even know if that was all of them. It looks like there was. So there goes the Uptecton as well. There's so many units. Actually, less now than I thought. Definitely a lot of corpses or would-be corpses, because obviously when a unit regresses, it's supposed to leave behind the corpse of the unit that it used to be, right? But at this point, yeah, I think the writing might be on the wall here. A second Archon Archives, or Ancestral Archives. I'm never going to remember that for some reason, even though I named both of them. Obviously, the first one, I was like, oh, Templar Archives. We'll call it Archon Archives because it trains Archons. And then I was like, well, it's kind of dumb, so let's call it Ancestral, which is a better name. So, makes sense. These units are going to be charging headfirst into death over here. There's not really any air support, so that attack is not going to be synced up very well. Would have liked him to at least scout this base first. That's probably something. He did that first, but he didn't do it now, so that would have been just a free win, and I don't know if Mesk would have even responded with his units, actually. So at the same time, this horde of units should definitely be able to tie up the ground units there. As soon as they try to move back, there will be more units there to start tickling them, and I think this is going to be playing out exactly like game number 2, where we had attacks from multiple fronts, slowly putting Mesk in the bin, so to speak. Only a couple of the calcs, there we go, finding the angle to attack. And yeah, now a couple of Atreus down here. Certainly, focusing down the Architect, that's a bit of a mistake there for sure. There's still more calcs over here wiping out the mineral line. Obviously, we can see no more power to that Warden, so he can just continuously kite backwards. And definitely wants to see if he can focus down the Nexus this time around. Only has 300 HP, so it can definitely go down a bit faster than before, and I think it will indeed finally evaporate. Very, very slowly now with only 2. Oh, can he save it? Can he save it? No, he can't save it. So sad. Well, it instantly gets rebuilt. It'll be another 75 seconds or so before it's up and running again. But that was superficial damage, to be honest. I mean, Mesk has good eco. He's got, almost 90 workers. He's got, this base being put up over here. So I think he's okay. It's just a question of how long he can actually survive. So let's see about that. Looks like Keyan doesn't want to keep building Calculisks, though. He is going into Matraval Tech. He is getting a lot of Bactyls. He still has almost 7,000 resources. If he loses this game, which I don't think he is, judging by the current way things are going, it would be because he's not super active on the map and because he has 7,000 minerals in the bank. What a surprise. Instantly morphing a lot more Bactyls. Interesting that Bactyls would be the unit of choice. I would maybe go Spire Protathalor, something like that might help, but not sure what he really intends to do in this situation. Crowd control is definitely causing some issues, and it looks like indeed there will be some silliness happening over there. Architect and Uptecton coming in for the attack. There's not really a front line here. There's one Iziracore, so that's probably the weakest point for this, is that there's really not a whole lot going on. There we go. Iziracore drawing shots. Finally, that structure will die. And look at this. The front-lining Archon will eventually die. There's only, this is an attack wave of 4 units, right? It wasn't the most impressive, way to send out a force. But it ties him up, and it, allows Mesk to continue stretching his legs. He's going up to 5 bases now, so that's actually more than what Keyan has since he lost this base down here. So maybe a little bit awkward, and this Uptecton even serving to be more than a little bit of a nuisance. Might even be able to escape if he heads over to there, but I'm not sure that he knew that existed. Oh, just at the last second, wasn't able to get out. So, I mean, as Protoss, your units are pretty meaty individually. If you can save one, even if it's at 3 HP, I mean, it'll get the shields back, and especially as an artillery unit, you can kind of do something with that, but isn't going to happen this time around. What is Keyan doing? He's got almost 10k minerals now. Spends a lot of it. Oh, these are Vilgoricores. Their icon is still fucked up. I keep forgetting to fix that. Somebody post a comment telling me to fix Vilgoricore, by the way. Please do that. And thank you. Somebody else also post a comment talking about how great the coffee page is. That would be awesome. Yeah, this move out is a lot less dangerous than the calcs. I wonder what's going on. I wonder what Keyan's thinking. If he gets the Vilgoricores up, obviously they can continuously do brood spawn. Bactylisks can maybe do some work. They are targeting over here, so this will get cleaned up. There's enough units over here to prevent this base from actually dying. It looks like maybe Mesk can fire back. I was thinking this would be a tie series, 2-2 at the end of it, but you know, with 10k minerals in the bank at various stages of the game, it's a little bit hard to affect change on the map. So now he's actually telegraphing his position here, so this is a little bit awkward. And again, no front line here to engage. There's a couple of units trailing behind. The Vilgoricors are going to come down, but I think just with this situation, you are definitely in a rough spot. So, oof, one more shot from that Dracodon. Bactilisk is indeed going to regress. But here come the Vilgs. So what can we do with the Vilgoricors? Right? We can spawn the Rillies. That's great. Start causing some pathing headaches. And now the Bactilisks have actually survived long enough to be able to lay down some damage from their maximum range for bouncing purposes. Mostly just deals damage to shields and stops them from regenerating, so not really like huge value because obviously they don't have great armor pen, right? They have 0. But they can definitely cause some headaches, right? And oh no. Oh, pathing. Oh, pathing. Well, you know, he can still just act like this is normal. He can just path towards this base because he's fucking beefy enough to not worry about it too much. Again, he needs a more reliable front line, I think, but the Convalisks are here. Now, Convalisks are an interesting unit. They will indeed do splash damage. They're not really good at single target damage, but they are indeed spawning some Rillarocors. So they're causing some headaches. That's the important part. They are dealing unsafe splash, by the way, so they don't spawn it on other Rillarocors, but they can run away on your own units. Now, there have been Empyreans being built at the same time. If the Convalisks target them, then they will spawn the Airborne. Oh, no, they won't spawn the Airborne. I guess that's a bug. But anyway, not a huge deal. I guess, you know, I know why I did that now. It's because if we made it do that, then stacking would just cause like 1 million units to spawn, so obviously pretty stupid. Meanwhile, the Architects are slowly being nibbled to death and decollided to death, but I think maybe even this one might survive. Just barely it should fall. And that's about it. I mean, that's it for this attack wave. Very expensive stuff. 13k in the bank now. And, oh, look at this. He's actually going to, with a mixture of regression and brood spawn, he is actually going to kill another Architect. It doesn't sound like a lot because we're like so late into the game, but it does mean a decent amount, right? The Uptectons, the Empyreans, if they had an Architect with them, they would have even more range to deal with certain defenses. But I think at this point, I don't know, man. Mesk has a lot of production. Mesk has a lot of money. He lost that base, but he still has this one. He still has this one that he just set up a little bit ago. Yeah, he might not be fully saturated necessarily, but Keyan hasn't expanded his economy in quite a while. I mean, maybe you can argue he doesn't need it. He is pretty close to being able to, you know, tech up to tier 3. That could help him out quite a bit here. Really depends on what he goes for his next rotation. I wonder if he's ever saturated. He's never saturated the gas or the ridge over here. He did saturate this one. That's probably, like, over time, that adds up to so much lost money, right? Oh, so much missing gas. And he is indeed going to build some units that will cost him gas. So that's the Protathalor, of course. Doesn't attack air units. So he's still going to have to deal with the Empyreans separately. And there's not really a good mineral-only solution to that. So I think he's going to be remaining at tier 2 for a while longer. And, you know, this base is obviously very easily abusable. It's not one of the safer bases like this one, which maybe isn't super safe, as we just saw from the attack onto Mesk's area, but it took a while to be broken, so I think it's a better pick than this one if you're not able to form a very mobile army and take control of this area. You know, put a Hatrosk up here, some defenses, and look at this. We have the Architects starting to get caught and won't be able to move because of all the Vorvs, but the Archons are here to deal AoE. That should cause that should put an end to this, I think, pretty easily. I'm looking around for the other units, but I don't think Keyan's too interested in setting them up yet. Somehow these units are not dying immediately, but I don't think they're going to be good enough to kill an Archon, so yeah, it took a little bit longer than we maybe expected with all the AoE there, but yeah, they will indeed be more than capable. More than capable. Meanwhile, the one Bactilisk tickling. just being annoying. You know, can send some of these Amaranths down to deal with it. There's a bunch of Mutas. I'm not sure why you would build stacking units against AoE. Empyreans have AoE. Atriuses have AoE. Uptectons have ground AoE. Archons have AoE. Heralds don't have AoE. Okay, you can use them versus the Heralds. Okay, Amaranths too. But what are you doing? The Protathalor is out of position. Definitely going to get caught before they can do too much. Okay, they do fight. They do fall back here, trying to live to flash shielding another day. Actually, they're Yeah, it's just getting slapped. There's so much concentrated power over here, and the Empyreans can just, they're air units. They can move around the map in ways that you can't. So Sicarilisks are also frontal units. I mean, I still think Keyan, he floated so much money. He should have just spammed out like Zorius, Aziricor, and then saved his gas for teching up. That definitely would have been a better move, I think. Now, this Archon will go down. It's a little bit async from everything else. The Sicarilisks are here to do some pretty consistent damage, and all the Mutas are here, and the Archons themselves are dying before they can get any juicy hits off. So as soon as the Empyreans go down, which you have to think maybe they will. Oh, maybe not, though. Yeah, I think maybe there's no micro to split these units, so he lost a lot of more Mutas than he needed to in that situation. He will stay alive. There is a single Atreus denying mining over there, which is pretty funny. And these Mutas are actually super low, and obviously the secondary weapon that fires while moving, that shreds his Muta count so heavily. Yeah, pretty rough. I mean, you get 2 Mutas per egg, so it's maybe a little bit easier to justify their stats and their place in the tech tree than you might initially think. But it's just like so difficult. Now, what do? You need a front line. You need something to tie up all of those units so that you're not busy dealing with, all of your damage dealers getting killed, right? That's the big deal. So more Archons on the way. An appropriate answer. Again, there's no front line to keep them at bay while the Mutas do damage. I mean, they don't have a crazy amount of range anyway, right? They have 4 range. That's more than the Archon, right? Archon only has 2, so. And the Sicarilisks also have 4 range, so they synergize well together, but they have no front line. There's no Aziricors. They're not going to be in position if Mesk pulls the trigger now, but he's only got 4 Archons, so. Hold on. I'll hold my horses. I'll stay my blade, so to speak. There is a Monument of Sin. There is another Fleet Beacon. So, and now the Sicarilisks are getting clumped up and killed. So here come the Izzies. Should definitely zone this out. Maybe one of those Archons actually got focused down. I don't know where it went. I can't seem to find it. Is it down here? It is. Okay, it was just scouting for another base. Here come the actual damage. It's not a crazy amount, to be fair. And one of the Archons will finally go down. I think the Izzies should be enough to at least hold this attack force at bay. This Archon not joining the fight because it's still busy down there. And unfortunately, the damage spread isn't spectacular, but both of the Archons will eventually fall. And that should mean that the ground units over here can't do too much damage, right? The Herald going down, that's going to stop a lot of the sustain for the Amaranths. And then I think he'll be, it'll stabilize a little bit, but he needs to spend his goddamn minerals. He's finally getting tier 3 tech. So it's not just over yet, but he's still not able to mine from this base. He can slowly harvest with 1 worker from the gas, apparently. That's what he wants to do. I think at this rate, I might not even be able to do anything other than this cast over because the series went on way fucking longer than I expected it to. Yeah, here come the Quasis to commence the tickling. Good minimap awareness here for Mesk to immediately jump on this. I don't think 4 Quasis are going to be able to deal with this Atreus, especially with the Amaranths backing it up. Just not enough armor pen. 2 damage a shot. And an Archon to deny the base. Whew. Okay, well. 12 gas for a moment there, by the way. He's still so far away from actually being able to get the tier 3 in action. I'm not sure he can hold on long enough. I mean, he has this base. It's not being denied because this force will indeed clean it up. Even though it seems silly, you can take this Archon and pull it away. Like, you can just walk away and force the units to be spread. Look how long it's taking to get killed. Well, there you go. Loses 2 Izzies, not really the end of the world. Still a better trade in terms of resources expended, but biggest problem is, of course, the positioning, right? He's drawn his enemies away. That's why I was saying you could move it. If you move it back to this base, okay, you reveal that you have that base, whatever. But better is that the units might chase you instead of, coming back. Just another asset you can use in the future. Bit of a poor approach here from Keyan's units. I think he's getting caught on the defensive line, as you can see, by Brood War pathing, TM. Amaranth slowly being chipped away at, so now the Striders should be able to be focused down. And a big horde of air units, so obviously focusing down the Atreus first and foremost would be the name of the game. Gets a couple of shots off that maybe it shouldn't have, but that's okay. I don't think there's any kill pressure here, to be honest. I think eventually Mesk will overwhelm Keyan's position, right? Kind of bleeding him dry in terms of the resources, not allowing him to really express the power of his tech. The only thing I can imagine is that Keyan eventually gets up to Tozgrilisks and is able to do some good damage with those and Calcs, but that kind of assumes he's able to get enough gas to really do that. I mean, he still has not fully okay, he has... No, I tell a lie. He hasn't fully saturated the ridge, but he has fully saturated his geyser in the third. Losing this Hatrosk, I feel like it wasn't really going to be contributing too much anyway, but it does hurt. And it's also like making another area of the map dark, which psychologically just makes you less likely to move out, less likely to be active. And you know, when you're in this kind of position, what you should be thinking to yourself is, I need map control, I need vision, I need information, I need, you know, tools so that I can make decisions. That's what he needs to be thinking right now. Unfortunately, I think Mesk just has way more tools than him. He has Empyreans, he has Archons, he has Uptectons, he has Architects. Like, okay, he doesn't have much of a front line of his own, but I don't think that the mutas are going to be the answer here. Now, if they can mutate into Tozgrilisks, which of course some of them are, they will get a decent spike in damage. Not as much as it used to be, it should be said, but enough to, you know, still be dangerous and relevant, although it will require splitting, especially with the Empyreans in action. The only thing that intercepts Empyreans, the projectiles, are the air units. Air units will intercept Empyrean projectiles, so you can use Naths to your advantage. You can use maybe Vithrilisks to frontline from the air battle. Adds a positional layer, right? So you have to think about that too. You're like, okay, man, here's the... Like, what do I do versus this? Whereas, you know, usually you can kind of think of air units as not needing a front line in the same way because they just don't have collision. So there you go. We are seeing the last Mutalisk morph into perhaps the last Tozgrilisk. Will it be in time? Will the trigger be pulled? More units being sent over. There's the front line we were thinking of. That's where the Amaranths are, and we do even have some Solarians for single target DPS. One more Tozgrilisk, and I think this will be the final showdown. Unless Keyan can hold on even longer. Which, I don't know, man. I feel like this is just too many units. Now, some of these units aren't with the rest of the army. There's still 4 Empyreans here. That alone was probably going to be enough. Add 2 more in, then you're starting to get real crazy. This base has just now been set up, but only 2 of these are Scorchriths. The Amaranths will reign supreme over here. I like this move because it's kind of like baiting the force. The problem is if the ground army moves out, you don't actually have much of a front line, and the Archons are going to be super important at dealing with the Taz. So he will eventually clear this base, which is, you know, pretty good. He'll even clear out part of the front line there as well. And if he uses these 4 units here, Mesk can definitely start sabotaging the mining in this base, really start putting the hurt on Keyan. But denying this base yet again is a huge deal. Some of these units not even fighting. And even if they were, it wouldn't matter too much. Now, here comes some more Izzies. Obviously, some stray Amaranths here are actually hugely impactful in the fight. And here we go. Some of the attacks going on cooldown because of the workers returning. Could have maybe been an opportune moment for attacking, but Keyan didn't feel comfortable moving out just yet. And here we go. We are going to see the move out, but again, he's only using Izzies right now. He's not using any of the real damage dealers. He might still be able to pick off one of the Empyreans with this move, but that's definitely the one that he wants to do the most damage to. Amaranth staying alive for so long because there's not really much damage dealing over here. And the Empyreans move back. I think the splash will probably be too much here onto the Tazes and the Cags. Or Calcs, rather. Let's see, they are slowly being picked apart, and finally, okay, a victory for Keyan, even though he did indeed lose yet another base. So, that's what he says. Oh, yes, that's right. He did say that he built 2 Enthelians, and he wasn't actually able to make them move anymore. I don't know what happened here to bug these out because they worked in the test map, so that is unfortunate. That's 1,600 gas. Oh, I guess they're actually 500 gas now, so that's 1,000 gas down the drain. That's going to hurt. That actually may have turned the tide because of all of the pulling, but I think the Archons being out of position were the bigger issue. He didn't even need the Enthelians to win that fight if he was going to be able to do that there. And Keyan is still in a very defensive position, so definitely something to keep track of. The Archons will eventually be bled out. They aren't going to be able to do too much damage. And they are not in the right position to do much anyway. Now, the Solarians are not a great choice versus the Tozgrolisks, but the 2 Empyreans must be respected anyway. And, you know, leveling yet another set of workers, huge deal here. Big, big deal. He can just sit here and start slowly picking off the Azira cores from a distance. I think some of the stewards are actually being popped here, so pretty solid there. Has to spend a little bit of time rebuilding them. I guess what we should do is we should make it so that there's no queue here anymore. So it doesn't draw the queue, similar to the nuke silo, so that you can still see the count of stewards you actually have. More units being set up in a proper position. And now, look at this. The Empyreans were the ones to be engaged upon. Good target selection, despite losing a lot of extra units that maybe he didn't need to. And now he's going to see if he can evacuate the Solarians. Slowly moving back here. The Tozgrolisks should be the primary target, but you just can't really fight them. They move faster than the Solarians, and they will indeed pick you apart. So really, once this army goes down, Keyan doesn't have much. He's not harvesting much gas. So if the Atreises can come in here clutch and splash a lot of the units, unfortunately right now they're targeting the wrong thing. But look at this. There could be so many juicy hits here. I think that unfortunately they died before they could really get them off. That was a really big moment. Now here come the Archons. If there's no micro from Keyan, here we go. He wisely backs off. That's going to buy time. He's not going to feel comfortable moving out. That's a huge deal. We definitely need to see, you know, more AoE coming out from Mesk. It's just a sentence I didn't think I'd be saying in this game. And I think the Empyreans are going to be a big deal as well. If he can, you know, get even more of them out, that would be great. Because specifically because of that interception rule, where they don't get blocked by ground units, unlike other interceptions. It makes it a huge difference when you're actually, you know, dealing with them. And right now, it's actually going to be mostly Calculisks here, which are a gas expenditure and not necessarily a super cheap one, despite not doing crazy amounts of damage to armored targets. Obviously, what you need to do now is didact recall them. It's a sunk cost fallacy right there, man. So Amaranth's just confirming that this position is still occupied, but he doesn't see any of the air units, which might make him feel a little bit wary. But he is indeed gathering his forces. I actually like the inclusion of Legionnaires, even though there's like decent AoE here. It just, they don't actually block the Archon movement too much, unlike Amaranths, which are a little bit slower. And obviously they teleport onto targets and stuff, so they can, you know, put a bunch of weapons on cooldown as you enter into the area. And also they're just cool, man. Cool guys. So it looks like maybe there's 2 control groups of Calcs and 1 control group of Tozgrolisks left to Keyan's name. If he loses these, the game is 100% over. Meanwhile, if Mesk loses this army, I mean, the game isn't necessarily over. He's got so many bases. He's got pretty good defenses at many of them. He's got units lying around that could be contributing to the war effort, admittedly, but, you know, playing defensively is fine. And we do see another charge in. So this is great move here. It's going to force the air units to consolidate on the front line. And the Empyreans and the Atreises are the primary targets here, with the Archons obviously being secondary ones, but you can kind of micro against them. These 2 Empyreans, if they were pulled down, would be a lot safer. But as of right now, they're still going to do a number on all of the stacked units. And look at this. A lot of the Calculisks going down. I think maybe only 6 Tozgrolisks remain right now. And the Empyreans, the Atreises, I think they're going to be too much for Keyan's army here. A lot of them regressing. I think I only see 1 Tozgrolisk left. And even though, again, this army might end up getting cleaned up eventually, that was most of Keyan's ability to fight. He doesn't have a crazy amount of gas. He only has 2 bases mining gas at this point as soon as this one goes down. And even still, it's not actually going to get cleaned up. And yeah, everything you have is shit versus armor. That is indeed true. You know, you were at tier 3. You could have gone the Gezkath. I think maybe he might forget that is now... there's no such thing as a 3.5 or 2.5 for Zerg. So that definitely would have helped him quite a bit versus the ground forces. And versus the air, he could have gone for Vithrilisks. So I think maybe he just didn't know his own comp too well there. I definitely felt like he was in a commanding position and could have won. He floated so much money and maybe made some errors in compositional choice. But there you go. That's the series. Whew, what a long one. Of course, check out the Discord server, check out the project, and check out our coffee page. And I don't really have much else to say. GG's. Use the Nydus next time, and I'll see you guys later.